The knock was sharp, louder than it needed to be. Not the sound of a neighbor stopping by, but of someone demanding to be let in. When he opened the door, 2 police officers stood there, hands resting on their belts, expressions unreadable. They said the HOA had called, filing complaints against him. His chest tightened. Neighbors were already peeking through blinds, waiting to see what would happen. But then, soft footsteps approached from inside the house. His wife stepped forward, still in her own uniform after a long day. The moment she appeared, the officers froze. What they expected to find was not what they got. For months, the HOA had been circling. It started with letters. Little notes slipped into the mailbox about grass height, paint color, a trash bin left too close to the curb. First, he shrugged it off, but the notes kept coming. Soon, the letters became warnings. Then the warnings turned into fines. He wasn't the type to back down quietly. He had questions: where the fees were going, why rules kept changing, why some neighbors got away with violations while others were singled out. He went to meetings, raised his voice, and for that, he became a target. Still, life carried on. He worked long hours. His wife, in her demanding career, carried herself with dignity and respect wherever she went. At night, they talked about retirement, about grandkids, about the kind of peace they wanted to enjoy in their own home. But peace didn't last long. One evening, the HOA escalated. They didn't just send another letter. They called the police. And as flashing lights washed over the street, he felt that old, heavy fear of being cornered by power, fear of being made into an example. But something inside him whispered, not this time. The officer's presence was deliberate. Boots planted firmly, their tone clipped and practiced. Sir, we've had multiple complaints. The HOA reports hostile behavior, disturbances, and failure to comply with community rules. He swallowed hard. Hostile? Disturbances? He had done nothing of the sort. He tried to explain, pulling out letters and records he had saved, but the words seemed to slide past them. Their eyes didn't leave his face. Their posture carried a silent warning. Comply, or else. From the sidewalk, shadows gathered. Neighbors leaned on mailboxes, eyes sharp with curiosity. To them, this wasn't just another HOA dispute. It was a show, and in that moment, he felt the weight of humiliation pressing down. Inside, his heart raced. Was this how it would end? Fined, shamed, maybe even arrested, all for asking questions no one else dared to ask? Then it happened. Footsteps echoed from the hallway, steady, purposeful. His wife emerged, still in her uniform, still carrying the unmistakable authority of her profession. The light from the porch caught the shine of her badge. The effect was instant. The officers froze. Their eyes darted from her to each other. The once firm tone in their voices cracked just slightly. The crowd outside fell quiet. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Is there a problem here? She asked, calm and commanding. That single question shifted the air. The authority that had been stacked against them suddenly tipped the other way. The standoff lasted only seconds, but it felt longer. The neighbors leaned closer. The HOA representatives at the end of the street, the very ones who had called the police, seemed to shrink back into the shadows. She stepped forward, her voice measured. "I'd like your names," she said to the officers. "And I'd like to know exactly what law my husband is accused of breaking." The officers hesitated. Their firm stance melted into awkward shuffling. They repeated vague phrases. Complaints, disturbances, refusal to comply. But under her steady gaze, those words collapsed into emptiness. Each time she asked a question about warrants, about legal grounds, about probable cause, the silence grew heavier. The officers had no answers, and they knew it. Around them, the audience of neighbors saw it too. What had been meant as a show of force now looked like a show of weakness. The HOA's plan to intimidate had backfired. Finally, she spoke again, her words sharp and final. "Unless you have a warrant or legitimate charge, this ends here. Now." The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. Then, almost sheepishly, the officers nodded. Without another word, they turned and walked back to their cars. The lights dimmed. The The street returned to quiet. The HOA had lost. That night became more than just another skirmish with the HOA. It became a turning point. What was meant to break him ended up revealing the truth, that power can intimidate, but only when no one dares to challenge it. The neighbors had seen it all. They had seen the HOA summon the police for something petty, and they had seen those officers falter under the presence of real authority. Whispers spread through the neighborhood, but this time, the whispers weren't against him. They were against the HOA. For him, the lesson was sharp and unforgettable. If you don't stand up to intimidation, it grows. But sometimes, courage doesn't come from loud words. It comes from standing firm when someone tries to push you down. For his wife, it was just another day of doing what she always did, protecting truth, upholding fairness, refusing to let power go unchecked. But for him, it was life-changing. The HOA never called the police again. Their letters still came, their rules still pressed, but the fear was gone. The neighborhood knew where the line had been drawn, and the question remained, one that lingered in every quiet conversation after that night. If she hadn't been there, what would they have done? How many others have faced the same abuse, without someone in uniform to protect them? This wasn't just about a house, a street, or a homeowners association. It was about something larger, the way power is used, and the courage it takes to face it.